The official trailer for Ahsoka dropped earlier today, and there are a ton of new hints about what this story will be about, along with several fun little Star Wars things to pick out and explain, so let's dive into it. We open up with a scene of Baylan and Shin boarding a New Republic vessel. It looks like they're flying around in a Clone Wars era Eta-class shuttle or something similar. I'm guessing they use that to their advantage to get aboard where a New Republic officer greets them. Baylan announces for him and the audience that they are not Jedi and they slaughter everyone, as we also saw in the teaser trailer. The ship nerd in me is excited to point out that it looks like the New Republic have begun using the T-70 X-Wing as seen in the background of the hangar along with some blue A-Wings. But back to the important stuff, Baylan also talks about how war is coming and that one must destroy in order to create. I have no idea who these people are or what their motivations are right now, and I love that. But let's speculate for a bit. Baylan has to be a former Jedi and Order 66 survivor. He later tells Ahsoka that Anakin always spoke highly of her, so this guy survived the Clone Wars and the reign of the Empire, but now he's seemingly searching for the heir to the Empire in Thrawn, and he's fighting against the New Republic? Shin asks what will happen when they find Thrawn, and he says power such as you've never dreamed. I feel like that could be trailer trickery. He might be talking about something or someone else. I wonder if Baylan is against both factions here. Maybe he thinks the existence of any galactic government will bring the inevitability of war, and he's trying to destroy both before the galaxy is consumed by conflict once again. I have no idea, but the teases dropped in this trailer have me very intrigued. As for Shin, I assume she is an apprentice he met in the years after Order 66, or maybe a Jedi youngling he rescued. She seems younger than Ahsoka or anyone who would have been a Padawan during the Clone Wars. Ivana Sakno, who plays Shin, is 26, and the Clone Wars ended 28 years before this series takes place. Not that that has to mean anything, I'm just spitballing ideas. But cutting over to Ahsoka, she talks again of hearing whispers of Thrawn's return as she looks around some ruins. The figure she is looking at, first of all, seems to be Togrutan, just like her. It's also reminding me of the iconography of the Mortis gods, like the mural seen in Star Wars Rebels, and Ahsoka is very connected to them, specifically the daughter, who has kind of sorta been following her around in the form of a convor named Morai, who appeared in The Mandalorian Season 2. The lines of the ruins also look similar to the World Between Worlds, which is another mystical realm in Star Wars, but the lines also match the strange, magic-looking map we see Baylan, Shin, and Elsbeth accessing later. I'm really hoping Dave Filoni uses this series as a chance to do some weird, trippy Force stuff like we've seen in the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. I think that would be a big swing for audiences who may have only seen live-action Star Wars content, but I always love it when we get into the big, mythological and mystical ideas. Speaking of the map and Elsbeth, she seems to be using the Force to access the thing amidst some ruins, or should I say, an aspect of the Force. There's a little green flame on a pyre or something, and that's usually connected to Night Sister magic. It seems more and more likely that Elsbeth might be a witch of Dathomir. We saw that she's been working alongside Thrawn in The Mandalorian, but I guess she doesn't know exactly where he is. I think what we're going to see early on is that Baylan and Shin want to find him, so they attack the New Republic transport that's holding Morgan Elsbeth and they break her out. I always love seeing a good fleet shot. We've got Mon Calamari ships alongside CR-90 corvettes and Hammerhead cruisers, a little mix of old and new, and then we get to see Hera speaking with Mon Mothma and other New Republic senators, including Hamato Ziono, the Hosnian Prime senator and father of Kazuda Ziono in Star Wars Resistance. Hera says she spent most of her life fighting a war, and now she's trying to convince the New Republic leadership to help her prevent another one, which is an especially heartbreaking line if you've read the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. She so badly wants the fighting to end, but she knows she has to see it all through. She knows threats to freedom won't disappear just because she wants them to. I'm sure a big part of the story will be about some of the leadership resisting the idea that Thrawn is a threat simply because they're tired of fighting, which then again the cycle will repeat decades later with the First Order, which is frustrating to see that it is a cycle, but it's also very real. The same threats will keep reappearing if we aren't diligent in recognizing and standing up against them. Ahsoka meets up with Hera, and she's got Huyang in tow. For another quick nerdy pause, I'm really happy to see these brown and blue New Republic uniforms similar to the Rebel uniforms in Return of the Jedi. We've still got the solid blue, but I think the brown looks way better. Anyway, I'm very curious to see Ahsoka's relationship to the Rebels crew in this series. I'm in the middle of a Rebels rewatch now, and I forgot how little Ahsoka is actually in it. We haven't had a big chance to see her alongside most of those characters, and this trailer suggests we have missed quite a bit, because apparently Ahsoka at one point trained Sabine, probably not in the Force, but in lightsaber combat if I had to guess. Sabine learned to wield the darksaber from Kanan, now she has Ezra's lightsaber. I think this is cool and will connect with the Baylan and Shin dynamic, two survivors of Order 66 that each took on apprentices of sorts, but while Baylan seems to be getting along pretty well with his student, Ahsoka struggled with hers and ultimately walked away, which seems like that's where we're gonna start this story. I'm cool with it, I'm just saying that it's a big leap from Star Wars Rebels I wasn't expecting. Sabine and Ahsoka barely shared any screen time together, and I have a lot of questions about what happened with Ahsoka after what she went through on Malachor that I hope this series answers. Anyway, let's check in on Sabine on Lothal as she cruises down a highway taken directly out of Star Wars Rebels, and there is an E-Wing flying after her, which you'll have to allow me to nerd out again because I loved that ship in Star Wars Legends. To see it again in live action, it's silly, but I am so happy about this. I also love that Sabine's helmet has a Lothcat drawn on it, which is perfectly in line with her character. The Arabesh also reads B-A-E-B? Babe? Yeah, right on, Sabine. The E-Wing looks like it's a New Republic fighter, which tracks. I don't know why it's trying to get in her way, but the power slide underneath it looks pretty rad. Mind blown indeed, little droid. Ahsoka talks to Hera about how she walked away from her Jedi training and then walked away from training Sabine, whatever that looked like. I think that's going to be a big part of her emotional journey this season, struggling with what it means for her to be a Jedi at this time, if she is one at all. The fact that Baylan says, "We are no Jedi" at the start of the trailer, I think that's meant to remind those of us who watched Rebels of Ahsoka's declaration that she is no Jedi. I don't think she considers herself one. I think there might be some imposter syndrome there since she didn't complete her training, but more than that, I think she's struggling with ideology and the very legitimate reasons she had for walking away. But at this point, she is one of the only survivors of that era. She has a chance to begin again, as Huyang points out in the teaser trailer. She can help Luke define what it means to be a Jedi in this time. She just has to get there herself first. I think she will decide that she is a Jedi by the end of the season, which brings me to one of the shots that is a near identical recreation from Star Wars Rebels. Sabine in front of her mural of the Rebels family with her short hair as she prepares to go out on a mission with Ahsoka, except this time, Ahsoka is still wearing gray and not white. I absolutely think Ahsoka will be a Gandalf-type character in this series. Dave Filoni has not been shy about comparing the two characters before, so yeah, I think we're changing a bit about that Rebels epilogue. I think this is now the start of Ahsoka's journey to reaching her full potential, to change from Ahsoka the Gray into Ahsoka the White, an Ahsoka who is unsure of herself and her role as a Force user in the galaxy, into the Ahsoka who knows what it means for her to call herself a Jedi once more. I'm sure that will annoy some people that these scenes aren't identical, but I understand it. Dave Filoni didn't know any of this was going to happen at the end of Star Wars Rebels. He wanted to write an epilogue that brought closure, but also an idea of what happened in the future. I think back then he wanted to suggest that Ahsoka becomes this even more mythical character, but he didn't know if he would ever be able to tell that story, and now we're getting the full version of it. So think of the epilogue of Rebels not as the literal interpretation of events, but more like Sabine telling us the story of what happened and taking some creative liberties. Speaking of Sabine again, she and Ahsoka have a conversation around a hologram that look like the ruins we have seen mostly in the teaser trailer, so maybe they meet up before that journey, or maybe Ahsoka is just showing Sabine what she found there. Back in her home, Sabine watches a recording of Ezra that seems like it's part of his goodbye message in Rebels. It's not word for word, but it gets the important stuff across quickly, like saying he can count on Sabine. It's great to finally hear Ezra, and I really wonder how they're going to communicate so much stuff from Star Wars Rebels into this series. Like I said, I already have a lot of questions. I can't imagine what I would think if I hadn't seen Rebels. But Sabine cuts her hair, which itself is very reminiscent of Kanan doing the same thing in Rebels before he goes to save Hera. But it's also like she's going back to her old self. We don't know what she's been up to for the past few years. Her people were massacred after a revolution that she helped start. She lost Ezra. Ahsoka apparently walked away from her. The fact that she has long hair at the start of the story and she cuts it off again for a more classic Sabine look suggests Ahsoka isn't the only one that's going to have to re-find herself in this series. And so their adventure begins, and we see glimpses of Ahsoka fighting against HK assassin droids and an Inquisitor in a shipyard of some kind. I am pretty confident that's the 8th brother from Rebels who was last seen plummeting to his death on Malachor, but this is Star Wars. A fall is nothing to a Force user. Maybe he follows Ahsoka off the planet, which itself is a story I hope we see. Ahsoka says sometimes we have to do what's right regardless of our personal feelings, which feels incredibly familiar to me, but I can't place it. It sounds like something Anakin would have taught Ahsoka, though. He says a similar line to Padme in Attack of the Clones. Sometimes we must let go of our pride and do what is requested of us. Ahsoka and Sabine have a great quick scene flying around a Purrgil as they're chased and shot at by another ship I don't recognize. I'm gonna guess it's the starfighter we saw Shin piloting in the teaser, but the Purrgil appearance is another Rebels inclusion that suggests our heroes are getting closer to finding Ezra since he was last seen with several of those creatures. He was also seen alongside Thrawn, and now we finally have our first public look at the character. We got to see him at Star Wars Celebration, but that was fleeting, and I haven't looked for the leaked images since then. I think he's looking great, and hopefully he's intriguing for Star Wars fans who have never read the books or watched Rebels. It's funny, now that we've seen him, I just want to hear him, and I'm so excited to see how he will be portrayed in live action. We see a duel between Shin and Sabine, and Shin declares that her enemy has no power, which I'm assuming she means in the Force, which again I think is likely. I don't think Sabine all of a sudden became Force sensitive in the years after Star Wars Rebels. I think she has just continued her training as a warrior under a second Jedi so she can help find Ezra and bring his lightsaber back. But just because Sabine doesn't have the Force doesn't mean she can't win this fight. Honestly, I think it'll be very interesting to see a matchup like this. And I will also point out that I think it's possible Sabine could be Force sensitive. There was a shot in the Celebration 2022 footage that showed us a hand attempting to use the Force on a cup or something. I don't know whose hand that was. I've been assuming it was Ezra trying to reconnect with the Force, but it could be Sabine. But I think it would be a weird thing to introduce all of a sudden. It just depends on how they pull it off. We see a duel between Ahsoka and Baylan as well, more of what we saw in the teaser. I originally thought this place was the world between worlds. Now we know that it's a cool magical map thing, but I also think there is a chance it is connected to the world between worlds. That's when he tells her Anakin spoke highly of her, and she retorts that she's not here to discuss her past. Oh, but Ahsoka, you totally are. She's going to have to revisit her past and her choices and come to terms with them. Even though I think she was right to walk away from the Jedi, I think it's a decision that still haunts her. In Rebels, she tells Anakin/Vader she won't leave him again. I think she feels some responsibility for his fall. There's a shot of Ahsoka escaping the ruins we've seen several times as they straight up explode, but she gets a pickup in her shuttle that I assume is piloted by Huyang. And by the way, that's another aspect of this story I'm curious about. When did they meet up and start hanging out again? As these trailers tend to do, there are just a lot of fast action shots at the end. Sabine fights against one of Morgan Elsbeth's soldiers from The Mandalorian Season 2. Ahsoka and the 8th brother run into blaster fire from Baylan and Shin's shuttle on that shipyard world, which makes me think the Inquisitor is not allied with the other Force users. Is he just out for revenge against Ahsoka? Maybe he just finally got off Malachor and he's very confused and figures he'll just keep hunting her. We see them dueling in a forest as well, and I love that he's got his crazy spinning lightsaber set to maximum and Ahsoka is calmly waiting. It's very Duel of the Fates, with Qui-Gon meditating as Maul paces around. And that's how the trailer ends, but we also learn that we're getting a 2-episode premiere on August 23rd. I have a feeling most of the footage we have seen is from those first 2 episodes. With an 8-episode run, the finale should air on October 4th. As we get closer, we will be preparing for the series a lot in the coming 6 weeks. I referenced Star Wars Rebels constantly during this breakdown. If you haven't seen it yet, you have time. It's 77 23-minute episodes. We're rewatching it right now and we'll be discussing every season. But don't worry, I will also cover character histories for everyone I think you need to know about. I'll do a full recap of what happened in the entire series. We've just got a ton of Ahsoka prep coming if you're feeling a little bit lost. So make sure you subscribe to our channel to keep up with everything Ahsoka. If you haven't already, please like this video, follow us on TikTok, Threads, Twitter, and Instagram, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.